Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to build a clean and modern sign-in sign-up form using pure HTML, CSS and JavaScript. No frameworks, no libraries, just simple code that's perfect for beginners. We will style it up with a smooth UI and you'll be able to toggle between the sign-in and the sign-up page with just a click. Now, if you're excited about this video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone else who's learning how to code. It really helps me keep making more tutorials like this. Alright, let's open up our code editor and dive right in. I already have our HTML file created, and inside my HTML file, I'm importing this style of CSS file, and also I'm using this CDN link right here to import font awesome icons to our project. And inside this style of CSS file, I basically have these basic styles right here. Up here, I'm importing Google font from Google, and down here, I'm applying that font to my web page. So let's start working on this project. So first of all, I'm going to create a div down here. And this div is going to have a class name of container. And this is the div that's going to wrap around everything in our web page. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to copy this class name. Now head over to my style of CSS file. Now target that class name. And first of all, I want this to have a height of 100 VH. Now this height of 100 VH is going to ensure that the container is going to take 100 viewport height. That is, it's going to occupy the entire height of its viewport. Like if you are viewing this on mobile device, it's going to occupy the entire viewport. And also if you are viewing it on desktop or laptop, it's going to occupy the entire viewport. Then we're going to give it a width of 100%. Now this is going to ensure that the container occupies the entire width. Now what we are going to do next is I want to add this background overlay right here. I want to add a background image. I want to add a blue overlay over this background image. To do that, we're going to make use of linear gradients in CSS. So right now I have a folder right here called images. Now inside this folder, I have a file called image.jpg. And this is the image we are going to use for that background image overlay. So I'm going to get rid of this. Then in here, I'm going to say it's going to have a background of linear gradients. So here I'm going to add an RGBA of 22, 36, and 86. Now the opacity is going to be 0.8. I'm going to add a comma, then I'll just copy the same RGBA color. I'll just paste that right here. And after that, we're going to add a comma, then we're going to add our background image. It's going to be URL. Now, our background image is inside our images folder. So we are going to go to our images folder. Then we're going to go for the image.jpg file. Alright, so I want to run this application. So I'm going to be making use of Visual Studio Code Live Server extension. Now, if you don't have that installed, you can install that in Visual Studio Code. Just go to plugins and look for Live Server. So I'm going to click on Go Live. We already have Live Server installed in my Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to click on Go Live. Now you can see our project right now with that beautiful background image and that little blue overlay to it. So let's make this background image actually better. So I'm going to give it a background size. I'll give it cover. And I'll give it a background position. Then I'll say fixed. Save that. And I'm going to notice that the background image actually looks better now. It's now fixed at the center of the web page. Now the next thing we're going to do is I want to add this white box that is going to contain our inputs and our buttons. Now to do that, we have to give this container a display of flex and a justify content of center, and also align items of center to position this at the center right here. So I'm going to give this container a display of flex, align items of center, and the justify content of center. Now this is going to position these elements vertically center, while this is going to position the element horizontally center. When you combine those two, it's actually going to place it at the center of the web page right here. Now next, in my index.html file, I'm actually going to create that box. I'll say div. Now I'll give this a class name of form container. I'll copy that class name. Now head over to my style.css file. Then I'll target that class name. The first I want to give it a background of white. then a maximum width of 450 pixels, then a width of 100%. Now what this maximum width of 450 pixels is going to do is that for large screen devices, like for large desktops and laptops, it's going to ensure that our form container, that's that white box that we are going to be adding our form, does not exceed 450 pixels of width. But for small screen device, it's going to have a width of 100%. But for small screen device, I'm just going to say I want to give it a width of 90%. That will be more responsive. Then we can give this a padding of 1.5 rem and a border radius of 7 pixels. I'm going to save that and check out the output, and you can see our white box right here. Next, we have to start adding the contents of this form container. So I'm going to head over to my index.html file. So inside this div container, I'm going to create a div. I'll call this div header. Class name, I'll give it a class name of header. So inside this div, I'm going to have a h1 tag. And this h1 tag is basically going to say sign up. And underneath this h1 tag, I'm going to have a div. Now that div I added is what's going to represent this little underline underneath this h1 text. So I'll copy this class name. I head over to my style.css file. Paste that here. So I'm going to give this header a display of flex, a justify content of center, then align items of center. Cool. So I want to give all the text inside this header tag a color of hash 1C398E. I'll save that. Checking out the ads, we can see that h1 tag right here in the web page. Now let's add that little underline on it. So that underline, to do that, I'm going to target that div tag. I'm going to header. I'm going to use pseudo selectors div. I'm going to give this a height of 5 pixels, a width of 10%, a background color of this color right here, hash 1C368E. I'll save that, check out the output, and you can see our line right here. But the problem we're having is that, remember, we gave this header tag a display of flex, so it's going to arrange the items of this header horizontally, but we want it to be arranged vertically. So to do that, I'm going to say I want to give this a flex direction of column, and this is going to ensure that our items is going to retain its display of flex, but they are going to be arranged vertically, not horizontally. So next, I want to add a margin between this h1 text and this line right here. So to do that, I'm going to say I want this div to have a margin top of 7 pixels. Then I want to give it a border radius of 20 pixels. I'll save that. And you can see the line right here is looking really, really good. Now next, we have to start creating our form. So I'm going to create a form tag. I'm not going to make use of this action property because we are not sending it to a backend. We're just basically designing the UI. So inside this form, we'll create a div. It's going to have a class name of input container. And this is a div that's going to house our input and our icon. So inside this div, I'm going to have an input of type text, and the placeholder is going to be name. And for the icon, I'm going to make it of the I tag. Then we're going to have a class name of far user. Save that, and you can see our input outside our form container. That's not supposed to be that way. So our input and our form are supposed to be inside this div, not outside this div, inside this form container div. So I'll paste that underneath here. Yeah, that's way better. But I cannot see my icon. Yeah, it's because there's not supposed to be any space here. It's supposed to be this line right here. All right. Yeah, and we can see the icon right here. So next, I'm going to add the other input. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to drag this down. Then for this one, it's going to be a placeholder of email. Then for this one, it's going to be a placeholder of password. This one is going to be of type password. And this one is going to be of type email. Cool. Then for the icon, instead of fast file user, I'm going to say fast file envelope. Then for this one, instead of fast file user, I'm going to say fast file lock. All right. Check out the output and we can see our inputs right here and our icons. So next we have to start styling them up. So I'm going to copy this input container class. I'm going to head over to my style.css file. Paste that here, dot the input container class. First of all, I'll give it a background color of hash F5. Now that's like a light gray color. And you can see that background color being applied right here. Now I want margin between each of these input containers, so I'm going to add a margin to them. So I'm going to say I want a margin of 20 pixels and 0. Now what this is going to do is going to apply margin 20 pixels top and bottom of that input container and margin left and right of 0. I'll save that, check it out. And you can see the margin being applied to these inputs. So then next, I'll just give it a height of 55 pixels. Save that. And you can see our input container right here. And next, let's style up these inputs and this icon. Well, first of all, let's style up the inputs. Then to style up the input, I'm going to use this input container. Then I'm going to target the input in there. And for the input, first of all, I want to take out the outline. So I'll say outline of none. Then a border of none, then a width and height of 100%, width of 100%, then height of 100%. Now what that is going to do is it's going to ensure our input is going to occupy the entire width of its parent container, 100% of the width and height of its parent container. Now what is the parent container of this input? This input container we created right here. Now you can notice that our input has a background of white, but we don't want it to have this background. We want it to retain the background of this input container. We give this light gray. So we can give the input, give it a background of, I'll give it a background of transparent. Now when I save that, I'm going to notice that the input is not transparent. It now retains the background of its original container. So next I'm going to give this input a font size of 0.9 rem and a text color of hash 33333. All right, and the input is actually looking better this way. Now next we have to give this input a little bit of a border radius to actually curve these edges. Now since the input is occupying 100% of its parent container, so I just add that border radius to the parent container. So border radius, and I'll give it 5 pixels. Now you are going to notice that those edges are not that sharp anymore. They're going to have something like a curved edge right here. So next, let's start styling this icon right here. So I'm going to target that icon. To do that, I'm going to use the same way I target the input. I'm going to say input container, then I'm going to target the I tag. That's this I tag. After this input, this I tag is our icon tag right here. And in our finished project, you're going to notice that our icon is actually positioned at the left hand corner of our input right here. So let's actually do that. So to do that, first of all, I'm going to give this a position of absolute. Then I'm going to give it a top of 50% because I want to be positioned at the middle of its parent container. Then I'm going to give it a transform translate y. Now give it a negative 50%. And lastly, I'm going to give it a left of 12 pixels. Sorry, pixels. And you can notice that we cannot see our icons anymore. And the reason we cannot see our icons right now is that our icons are taking a position of fixed. Now when you give an element a position of absolute, by default it's going to assume a position of fixed. So actually ensure it actually gets a position of absolute and its position absolute to its parent container, we have to give its parent container a position of relative. So up here I'm going to give this input container, that's this input container, this container right here that's housing this icon, I want to give it a position of relative. So in this input container, I'm going to say position relative, and I'll save that. And when I return, you can see our icons are now positioned at the left hand side corner of our input. Now these icons are actually covering this input. Now what I want is I want this input to stand around this area right here. So to do that, I'm going to give this input a padding left. Now come back to this input and I'll give this input a padding left of 2.2 rem. Then I'll save that. Now you're going to notice that our icon is no longer going to cover our input, and we can type on our input and the icon is not going to cover our input. Now let's actually make this icon appear better. So first of all, I'm going to give it a color of hash 64748B. Then the font size of 0.85 rem. Yeah, that looks way better. Next, what we're going to work on next is that when we are focused on this input, I want this icon to be blue to indicate that we are actually focused on this input. So when we are focused on this image, this envelope icon is going to have a color of blue. So to do that, I'm going to scroll up. I'm going to make use of this input container. I'm going to say dot input container, and then I'm going to use a pseudo class focus within. If there's an input inside this container, you are focused on that input. I want to give this I tag a color of ash, this blue color right here. Save that. Now when I go back to the web page and focus on any input, you're going to notice that that icon is going to have a color of blue. Now let's add a transition to that icon. So I'll scroll down to my icon. Then I'm going to say I want to give it a transition of color 0.8 seconds in and out. That way is actually going to transition when you focus on another input. You're going to notice that little cool transition when you focus on another input. It's going to transition to blue. So next we can start working on this text right here. Already have an account. Click sign in. Let's work on that text. So after this input container right here, I'm going to give this a p tag. I'll give it a class name of form text. Then it's going to say already have an account. Click sign in. I want to copy that class name and style this up. So I want to copy that, head over to my style.css file. Then I want to paste that here. So if I'm going to give it a color of hash 33333, then a font size of 0.85 rem. Save that and check it out. And you can see our text right here, but I want it to be positioned at the center. So I'm going to give this a text align and I'll give it center. Yeah, that's way better. Now next, we are going to start working on these little two action buttons right here, this sign up and this sign in button right here. So I'll head back to my HTML file. So I add a div here. This is going to have a class name of action buttons. Then it's going to take two buttons. You're going to take the first button, and this button is going to be sign up. Then the second button is going to be sign in. Save that. And you can see these two buttons right here, sign up and sign in. But I want them to be of type button so they don't submit the form. So I'll say type, I'll say button. Then for this other one, I'll say type, then I'll say button. Because I don't want them to submit the form. I actually want to add an event listener to them. And the first I want to apply to this action buttons container is I want the margin between the container and this. I already have an account, click sign in text right here. So I want to copy the class name. Copy this class name right here. I head over to my style.css file. Underneath here, I'm going to paste that in. Then I'm going to give it a margin of 25 pixels and 0. Now what this is going to do is going to apply margin of 25 pixels top and bottom to this div container, and it's going to add a margin left and right of 0. So I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that it's going to apply a margin at the top and at the bottom of this container. Now next, I'm going to give this a display of grid. Now what I want to do is that I want these two buttons to occupy equal width in this container. I want this sign up to occupy 50%. I want this sign in to occupy 50%. So to do that with this CSS grid, I'm going to say I want this to have a grid template columns of 1FR, 1FR. Then I'll save that. Then I'm going to notice that both of them are going to occupy an equal width. Now, if I want TV items, I'm going to say add another 1FR. I'm going to notice that the TV items are going to occupy equal width. Now, if I use just 1FR, I'm going to notice that only one item is going to occupy the entire width. The other item is going to wrap underneath. But I want two items, so I'm going to use 1FR, 1FR. Then you can notice that both of them are occupying 50% each of the parent container. Now I want a gap between them. They are too close to each other. So I'm going to give them a gap. Yeah, say 12 pixels. Save that. And you can notice there's now a gap between them. Now let's start styling this button. Now to style the buttons, I'm going to make use of that action buttons class name. Then I want to target the button in there. Now first of all, I want to say outline of none. Then border of none. Then I want it to have a background color of this blue color right here. Then a text, a color of white. Save that. I can notice our buttons are looking better. So let's add a padding to this. I'm going to give this a padding of 0.8 rem and a font size of 1 rem. Then lastly, I add a border radius of 30 pixels. Let's check out the output. And you can see our action buttons are looking better. Now, I want to hover on this action button. I want it to have a cursor of pointer like you are hovering over a link. So I'm going to give this a cursor pointer. Now in our finished blue, we're going to notice that this background of blue is only going to be applied to our active button, which means both of our buttons cannot be blue. Right here, we have both of our buttons blue. So let's actually work on that. So I'm going to create a different class. I'll call this class .activeButton. Active button. Now in this class, I'm going to copy these two properties right here, and I'll paste it in this class. Save that. You're going to notice that none of our button has a background of blue or a text color of white. So what we want to do is that when you click on this button, when this button is active, you're in the sign-in page, it's going to have that class. Then next, we have to actually apply this class. So I'm going to copy the class name. I'm going to head over to my index.html. Then I'm just going to apply this class to this one right here with a class name. Then I'll paste that right here as a class name. Then I'll save that. Now you can see that this one is actually acting as the active button. And when we start adding JavaScript to this application, when we click on sign in, this is going to be the active class. We're going to use JavaScript to dynamically add the class to this sign in button. And when we click on this sign up, we're going to dynamically use JavaScript to add the class back to this sign up button. So with that, we are basically done with the UI of this web page. Let's start actually adding JavaScript. So first of all, I'm going to head down to this HTML code right here. Then underneath this div tag, just before the body tag, I'm going to create a script tag. Then between this opening script tag and the closing script tag, and this is where we're going to write all our JavaScript. Now, first of all, we have to actually target these tags with JavaScript. Now, when we are styling, we're adding class names to our div tag class input container. Then in our style of CSS, we are going to actually target that class. So we have to do that in JavaScript. So I'm going to add a unique ID to the elements I actually want to target. So first of all, add an ID to this one. I'll call this sign up. Then I'll add another ID to this one. Then I'll call this sign in. And for this name field right here, we want this to have a height of 55 pixels when we click on sign up and a height of 0 pixels when we click on sign in. Because in the sign in page, as in a login page, we don't want to have this name. We only want the email and the password. So we have to add an ID to this input. So I'm going to scroll up, and in that first input, that name input, I want to add an ID. I'll call this name field. Now for this text right now, I already have an account. Click sign in. When someone clicks on sign in, I want to change this text. So don't have an account. Click sign up. So I'm also going to add an ID to this. Then I'm going to call this ID from text. And lastly, for this H1 tag, for when we are in the sign in page, I want it to display sign in. When we are in the sign up page, I want it to display sign up. So I'm also going to add an ID to this too. I'll call this title as a page title. Now let's actually target that with JavaScript. And to target elements in HTML with JavaScript, we actually use 3 ways. We use the query selector, get element by ID, or get element by class name. Now, since we give these elements a unique ID, we are going to make use of get element by ID. So I'm going to say document dot get element by ID. Now, first of all, I want to target the sign in button, and that's going to target this sign in button right here with JavaScript. Now we have to set it to a variable so we can reuse it. So I'm going to call this variable const sign in button, then it's equals to this right here. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the sign up. Then instead of sign in button, I'm going to sign up button, then it's going to target the sign up button. Then I'll do the same thing for the title, as that h1 tag title. Then it's going to target the ID added to that title, which is title. Then I'm also going to target this text right here, so I'll just copy that down. I'll call this one form text. Then it's going to target this ID added right here, which is going to be form text. Then lastly, you have to target this input right here, this name field input. So I'll just copy that down. Now say name field. Then I'll call this name field. Now after targeting these elements with JavaScript, next I want to create a function that's going to run when someone clicks on the sign in button. So I want to call this function sign in. Now, since for our sign in page, we're not going to have the name input, we're just going to have the email and password. So first of all, I want to target that name field. So I want to say name field dot style dot the height. I want the height to be 0 pixels. Then next, I want the title dot the inner HTML. I want to change the text in that title from sign up to sign in dot inner HTML. I want it to be sign in. Then next, for the form text dot inner HTML, I want to change the text to don't have an account, click sign up. Then next, I want to remove the active class from the sign up button. Remember that the sign up button is going to have the active class and it's going to have a background color of blue and a text color of white. So when I click on sign in and I run that sign in function, I want to actually remove that class from this one and add that class to this one. Then this one is going to be blue and it's going to have a text color of white. So I'm going to say sign up button dot class list dot remove the active class, the active button class. Then I want to add that class to the sign in button. So I'm going to sign in button dot class list dot add the active class. Now when I'm clicking on sign in, you're going to notice that it's not actually changing to the sign in page. The name field is not disappearing from the UI. Now the reason for this is because we've actually created that function, but we have not connected that function to this button. So to connect this function to this button, we have to add an event listener to this button. So when a user clicks on this button, we are going to actually perform an event. So to do that, I'm going to create an event listener. So then in this variable declaration, I'm going to say sign in button dot add event listener. Now, what event listener do I want to listen for? I want to listen for a click event when someone clicks on the button. And when someone clicks on the button, I want to run this sign in function. Then I'll save that. Now let's actually test it. When I click on the sign in button, you're going to notice that input is going to disappear, but we still have that icon right here. So to solve this problem, I'm going to give this input container an overflow of hidden. That way, when it's at a height of 0 pixels, every element inside that input container is going to be hidden. So I'm going to go back to our code. Then I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. Now inside that input container, I'll give this an overflow. Then I'll give it hidden. Now when I return back to the web page and click on sign in, you're going to notice that name field input is going to disappear from the UI. But our active class is not being added to this button. Why? So I'm going to head back to that JavaScript. Okay, because I'm seeing active class, not active class, active button. Then I'll click on sign in. Yeah, that class is being applied now. So what we're going to work on next is that when we click on this sign up button, it's going to bring back our name feed, and we're basically going to go back to the sign up page. So I'm going to head back. I'm going to create another function down here. Just copy this function, then I just drag that down. Then first I want to change the name of this function from sign in. Then I'm going to say it's going to be sign up. Then instead of having a height of 0 pixels, it's going to go back to a height of 55 pixels. Then the title is going to go back to sign up. Then instead of having don't have an account, click sign up, we are going to go back to this original text right here. We're going to say already have an account, click sign in. I'm going to get rid of this. Then I'll paste that in here. And after that, I want to change this remove class. I want to add the class to the sign up button. Then I want to remove it from the sign in button. Then I'll save that. Go back to the web page, refresh the web page. Then when I click on sign in, it's going to go to the sign in page. And when I click on sign up, it's not going to bring back our name feed. That's because we've not added an event listener to the sign up button. So let's do that. So up here, I'm going to say when someone clicks on the sign up button, I want to add an event listener to this. Now, what do I want to listen for? I want to listen for a click. When someone clicks on the button, I want to run this sign up function. So I'm going to save that. Now, when I click on sign in, it's going to take us to the sign in page. When I click on sign up, it's going to bring back that name feed input, and it's going to take us to the sign up page. Now, next, you have to add a transition to this input and a transition to these buttons right here. So for the buttons, I'm going to add a. So first of all, let me add a transition to the input. I'm going to add a transition of height 0.5 seconds is in out. Then for the active button, I'm going to add a transition of 0.7 seconds is in out. And I'll save that. Then when I return back to the web page, when I click on sign in, you're going to use that smooth transition. I click on sign up, you're going to use that really cool smooth transition. Now that's it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial, you learned something new today, smash on the like button and leave a random comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm push this content to more people who are going to find it helpful. And also, it's actually going to help the channel a lot if you smash on that like button. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell for more helpful web development tutorials like this. I'll see you in the next video.